The day Marissa Wilder signed the $300 million contract, the world called her unstoppable. Cameras flashed as she raised her champagne glass, her diamond ring catching the light, her voice steady, her smile practiced. Beside her stood Ethan Cole, her company's charming COO, the man she claimed helped her build everything. At the back of the room, half hidden behind reporters, her husband Noah Wilder watched in silence. He wore a simple suit, no entourage, no applause, just the quiet confidence of a man everyone mistook for ordinary. They said Marissa had outgrown him, that she traded struggle for power, loyalty for luxury. But when she filed for divorce 2 days later, cold, precise, without a trace of hesitation, she had no idea the company she thought she owned, the empire she flaunted, and the contract that made her famous, all belonged to the man she just left. So why was Noah smiling at the press conference where his wife celebrated her victory? What did he know that she didn't? And why would the man she betrayed become the last person she should have ever underestimated? The news broke before sunrise. Marissa Wilder's face flashed across every business feed. Wilder Tech secures $300 million government contract. Cameras, champagne, applause. She looked unstoppable. Pearl blazer, practiced smile, reporters hanging on her every word. At home, Noah watched from the kitchen counter with a mug of black coffee and a silence that pressed against his ribs. He'd seen that blazer before. He bought it on credit 2 years ago, back when their company was still a sketchpad dream on their living room floor. He smiled, proud and small at the same time, as her voice came through the speakers. We did this through partnership and trust. Funny choice of words. She came home late that night, smelling like hotel soap and perfume that didn't belong to their house. Can you believe it? She said, dropping her bag on the marble island. $300 million, Noah. Everything's about to change. He grinned. You mean we just landed $300 million? Marissa's laugh was too light, almost rehearsed. Oh, come on, you know I'm the public face. You'll still handle the back-end stuff, right? That's your thing. Back-end stuff. The man who designed the software backbone that made the contract possible. Now just back-end stuff. He nodded anyway. Sure. Congratulations. When she kissed his cheek, her phone buzzed. She flipped its screen down. The name that flashed before it dimmed burned into Noah's mind. Ethan C., her business partner, his former college roommate. Later in the quiet, he opened their shared bank portal to make sure payroll cleared for their small engineering staff. A new transfer line appeared, recurring $5,200 a month, Cole Consulting, LLC. Noah stared at the entry, same last name, same initials. He checked the history. The payments had started 8 months ago. He clicked deeper. The vendor address matched an upscale apartment downtown. Noah sat back in his chair, heartbeat climbing. The same apartment building where Ethan had once hosted working retreats. The same building where Marissa said she was networking. He closed the laptop. He could feel the floor tilt under him. He wanted to believe it was an error. He wanted to believe she was still the woman who once waited tables beside him while dreaming of a better life. At 1 a.m., she mumbled in her sleep, "Ethan, stop." Noah stared at the ceiling until morning. When dawn broke, she was already gone. Voicemail saying she'd be at the office all day. Press stuff, baby. He drove downtown anyway, parked across from the glass tower where their company sign now glowed in silver letters, Wildertech. Through the lobby window, he saw her step out of an elevator, laughing with Ethan. Her hand brushed his arm. Not accidentally, not professionally. Ethan leaned closer, said something that made her lips part in a small, secret smile Noah hadn't seen in months. Noah gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles blanched. Then, he smiled. Not the wounded smile of a man defeated, but the quiet calculation of someone who had just seen the board for what it really was. He exhaled, slow, steady. Okay, he whispered. Let's see how deep this goes. The car clock blinked 9:47 a.m. Outside, the city moved like nothing had changed. Inside that sedan, something inside Noah did. He started the engine, called his sister. "Claire," he said, voice steady, "I think my wife's having an affair with my old friend, and I think she's using company money to fund it." Silence on the line. Then, how sure are you? Sure enough to bet everything. Then don't confront her yet, Claire said. Gather evidence first. Quietly. You'll only get one shot at this. Noah watched Marissa disappear into the elevator again. Ethan's hand on her back. He put the car in gear, pulled away from the curb, and looked in the mirror one last time. The smile stayed. Because when a kind man finally stops pretending he doesn't see, that's when the story really begins. The motel room smelled of stale coffee and rain. Noah sat by the window, half lit by the flicker of a streetlight outside, staring at the documents spread across the table. Bank statements, invoices, transfers. Each number was a heartbeat in a story he didn't want to believe. But denial had expired the moment he saw her laugh with Ethan in that lobby. Now every transaction, every late-night meeting, every whispered call felt like a map of betrayal carved into his life. His phone buzzed. It was Claire. I found someone, she said. Private investigator, former detective. Her name's Aisha Grant. She's clean, discreet, and expensive. Noah gave a tired laugh. Good, I want expensive. Expensive means she's good at keeping secrets. An hour later, Aisha arrived. Sharp suit, sharper eyes. She didn't waste words. She scanned the table and asked, You want her caught or destroyed? Noah paused. I want the truth first. She nodded slowly. Truth's a dangerous place. Once you go there, you don't come back the same. I already haven't, he said quietly. By morning, Aisha was inside Wilder Tech's orbit. Cameras, access logs, hotel records, everything she could legally touch. Within 3 days, she had a file ready. Noah met her in a diner off I-75, far from the city noise. The folder was thick. Inside it were photographs. Marissa and Ethan arriving at a boutique hotel. Ethan's hand on her waist, her wedding ring off. Dates matched the wire transfers. She's been careful, Aisha said, but he isn't. The apartment lease is in his assistant's name, paid monthly by your company under vendor code R457. And this, she slid another photo forward, was last week. Same hotel, different night, same pattern. Noah stared at the pictures. They didn't look cinematic. They looked ordinary. Two people who stopped pretending to hide. That made it worse. He asked, Any signs they're moving money? Plenty. He's billing consulting fees from dummy corporations. I've traced at least 7. You've been funding their lifestyle for almost a year. Noah felt the words burn through him. He pressed his thumb against the photo, not out of anger, but to remind himself it was real. How do I use this without her knowing? You let me build a timeline, Aisha said. Then you hand it to your lawyer, quietly. You play dumb until you've got leverage. Leverage. The word stuck like a seed in his mind. That night, Noah sat in his car outside their home. Engine off, lights out. Through the window, he saw her silhouette pass by. Phone in hand, laughter faint through the glass. For a moment, he remembered the woman who used to fall asleep on his shoulder while they coded through the night when success meant paying rent on time. He wanted to hate her. Instead, he felt something colder, clarity. He texted Claire, I've got proof. Her reply came fast. Don't show her. Wait for me. We'll draft the filings first. He pocketed the phone and exhaled. 2 days later, Aisha's second report arrived. More evidence, but one line hit harder than all the photos combined. Shared account transfer, $40,000 labeled bonus. Recipient, Ethan Cole. That was company money. Money meant for employee bonuses. Money meant for the team who trusted them. The next morning, Marissa breezed into the kitchen wearing the same pearl blazer from the press conference. She poured herself coffee and said, Oh, I almost forgot. I'm flying to LA tomorrow with Ethan. Investor dinner. Noah didn't blink. Of course. Congratulations. She smiled, almost relieved by his calm. I knew you'd understand. He smiled back, matching her tone. Always. As she left, he opened his phone, clicked record, and whispered a single line. Phase 1 complete. Outside, rain began to fall. Soft, steady, cleansing. Inside, Noah's patience hardened into purpose. Because he wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. He was going to let her build her empire higher. So when it fell, everyone would see who was standing beneath the rubble. And for the first time, The kind man didn't look kind anymore. Claire arrived at Noah's place just after sunset, legal pad under her arm, hair tied back, eyes sharp with sisterly fury. She spread the investigator's documents across the table. You realize this is embezzlement, right? She's using company funds to pay her lover's bills. If you expose this now, you could ruin her reputation overnight. Noah's gaze stayed on the window where city lights blinked like quiet witnesses. Not yet, he said. If I move too soon, she'll spin it. She's the public face. People adore her. I need something she can't explain away. Claire sighed. Then we need to make it legal before we make it loud. First step, we freeze assets. She called a contact at her law firm, a woman who specialized in corporate disputes. By midnight, they had a draft motion ready, a preliminary injunction to pause all withdrawals from company accounts pending review. Claire looked up from the keyboard. You sure you want to go this route? Once this hits, there's no turning back. Noah nodded. I've been turned back for years. The next morning before Marissa's flight to LA, the motion was filed under seal. Noah went about his day as if nothing had changed. He even texted her, "Safe travels. Proud of you." Her reply came fast, playful, detached. You're the best, always have been. That line lingered longer than it should have. By noon, Claire called. Judge signed the temporary freeze. Her company cards suspended. She'll find out the moment she tries to use it. Noah was sitting in his car when the alert came through. An attempted charge declined at an airport boutique. He could picture the exact look on her face. Confusion, irritation, maybe a spark of fear. Half an hour later, his phone rang. Marissa's number. Hey, he answered, tone calm. Noah, did something happen to the company accounts? My card just got declined. He paused long enough for her worry to bloom. Strange. Could be a banking issue. I'll check with accounting. Please do, she said, her voice tight. We have investors waiting in LA. This can't happen right now. I'll look into it, he replied softly, then hung up. He didn't smile this time. He just sat there watching planes climb into the sky. One of them carrying the woman who didn't yet realize she'd just lost control of everything she thought was hers. That night, Claire came by again. The injunction will trigger an internal audit, she said. Once that starts, every transaction tied to Ethan's fake company becomes evidence. Noah poured her coffee. Good. I want everything recorded, every cent traced, but quietly. She can't know I'm involved. You're playing a long game, Claire murmured. That's not like you. He met her eyes. Kindness used to be my armor. Now it's my camouflage. 2 days later, Wilder Tech's CFO emailed both Noah and Marissa. Urgent. Request for clarification of unusual transfers. The thread went silent after Marissa forwarded it to Ethan with a single line. Handle this. Aisha intercepted the forwarded copy. She's panicking, she told Noah. He's sloppy. He's deleting emails from her account but leaving traces on his. I can recover them if you give me access. Do it, Noah said. Every word they've shared, I want it. By the end of the week, Aisha sent him a secure drive. Inside were messages, months of them, flirtations turning into plans, mentions of when the divorce is final, our company, and one that froze Noah's breath mid-scroll. Once the $300 clears, I'll make sure he signs the transfer. He trusts me. He won't even read it. That line wasn't just betrayal. It was blueprint for theft. Noah stared at the screen, pulse steady, expression unreadable. Then he said quietly, She's going to take my signature, so I'll make sure it ruins her when she does. He called Claire again. Draft a counter-trust agreement, he said. One that mirrors the old ownership structure, but puts me in silent control. We'll file it retroactively. You're hiding your stake? Claire asked. I'm protecting it. She wanted power. Let's give her the illusion of it. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. Marissa landed in Los Angeles that night, blissfully unaware that the company card decline wasn't a glitch. It was a warning shot. Ethan met her at the terminal, flowers in hand. Rough day? He asked. She smiled thinly. Just a banking hiccup. But the smile didn't reach her eyes. As they drove away, her phone buzzed again. An automated alert. Account access limited pending review. Her hand trembled slightly as she silenced it. Ethan laughed. Relax, you're untouchable now. But she didn't answer. For the first time, she wasn't sure. And back in that quiet motel room, Noah closed his laptop and whispered, one layer down. The storm outside cracked the sky open, and he didn't flinch. Rain streaked the glass outside Noah's apartment as he stared at the glowing spreadsheet on his screen. Rows of numbers, names, shell companies, and transactions. Each one a thread in the web Marissa and Ethan had spun. He wasn't angry anymore. Anger burned too fast. What filled him now was precision, the calm of a man who knew every move before making it. Claire sat across from him, her voice low. Your ownership structure's still intact. Technically, the company is owned by a holding trust you created 5 years ago, Arden Trust LLC. The public filings show Marissa as CEO, but legally she reports to the board, and the board reports to Arden Trust. Meaning? Noah asked. Meaning you, she said. You're the majority owner, but no one knows, not even her. He leaned back in his chair, the glow from the laptop drawing faint shadows under his eyes. So while she's out there flashing contracts, she's really signing my paperwork. Exactly, Claire replied. But to prove that in court, we'll need to show intent, how she used your assets against you. We'll need Hayes. 2 days later, Dr. Robert Hayes arrived from Chicago, an older man in a charcoal suit who treated evidence like currency. He listened in silence as Noah explained the situation, his fingers steepled under his chin. You've built the perfect trap, Hayes finally said. But you'll need to tighten it. Right now, she can still claim ignorance. You need documentation that shows she knew she wasn't the true owner. How? Noah asked. Hayes smiled faintly. You let her prove it herself. Meanwhile, Marissa was glowing under the California sun. The investor dinner had gone perfectly. The Los Angeles skyline glittered through the restaurant's glass walls as she raised her glass beside Ethan. To us, she whispered. To new beginnings. Ethan grinned. To the end of old ones. She didn't catch the double meaning. She didn't notice the reporter sitting 2 tables away, snapping photos for a lifestyle piece that would go viral the next day under the headline, Power Couple Behind Wilder Tech's Historic Deal. When Noah saw the photo online, he didn't blink. He printed it, placed it neatly in a folder labeled Phase 2. By that evening, Hayes had traced Ethan's consulting firms, each registered under different names but funded through the same route. He's clever, Hayes said, sliding the papers forward, but not clever enough. One of his shell corporations is receiving direct payments from a Wilder Tech vendor, and that vendor is tied to Marissa's signature. Fraud, Claire muttered. Hayes nodded. Conflict of interest, breach of fiduciary duty, and embezzlement, depending on how deep you want to go. Noah studied the documents. I want it all, quietly. Build the file. When she comes home, I want her to believe nothing's wrong. At midnight, Marissa landed back in the city. She stepped into their home like a guest, heels clicking against the marble floor. Noah was reading on the couch, calm, polite, unreadable. You're still up? She asked softly. Couldn't sleep, he replied. How was L.A.? Productive. Investors are thrilled. He smiled faintly. Good. You deserve it. She blinked, searching his tone for sarcasm and finding none. You're being sweet tonight, she said with a nervous laugh. Always, he said. When she went upstairs, he sat in the quiet, listening to her footsteps fade. Then he opened his laptop again and typed one email to Hayes. Begin Phase 3. Quietly file a corporate review request through Arden Trust. Flag potential mismanagement. The next morning, Marissa's assistant burst into her office. Ma'am, the board just got an internal audit notice from an independent trustee. They're asking about vendor relationships. Marissa froze mid-sentence. What trustee? The parent trust. Arden something. Her hand went cold around the pen she was holding. Who authorized it? I'm not sure, the assistant stammered. It came through legal channels. They said it's procedural. She forced a smile. Fine. Tell them to cooperate. It's probably routine. But her fingers trembled as she texted Ethan. Did you authorize any audits? Ethan replied a minute later. No. Stay calm. We'll fix it. That night she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The apartment was quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. She didn't notice Noah outside on the balcony, phone pressed to his ear, whispering to Hayes. "Let it reach the board," he said. "Make it look random. By the time she figures out who controls it, she'll be standing on quicksand." He hung up and watched the city lights shimmer below. In one of those buildings, Marissa was probably scrolling through the same news article, reading her own name beside Ethan's in headlines that called them the new faces of power. Noah smiled faintly just once, before the wind caught his breath. She thought she owned everything. She had no idea she was already signing her own downfall. The office buzzed with tension when the auditors arrived unannounced. Wilder Tech's glass walls, once a symbol of transparency, suddenly felt like mirrors hiding cracks. Marissa stood in the hallway trying to smile as the lead auditor explained the process. "Routine," he said, "just a compliance review." But his polite tone couldn't hide the gravity in his eyes. Someone had triggered this from inside the parent trust, which meant someone higher than her had the authority. She called Ethan the moment they left her office. "Something's off," she said, pacing. "They're asking about vendor payments, about your consulting invoices." Ethan's voice stayed calm. "They can't trace it back to us. Everything's layered." "I hope so," she muttered, rubbing her temples. "Because if they dig too deep, they'll find things that—" She stopped herself. "They won't," Ethan interrupted. "Relax. You're the CEO. You control the narrative." But later that night, she sat in her office long after everyone had left, scrolling through old bank records on her private laptop. The numbers glared back like ghosts. Transfers, bonuses, vendor codes. Her heart pounded. She deleted the files, emptied her trash folder, then poured herself a drink. Across the city, Noah and Claire watched a secure feed from Aisha's laptop. Every deleted file was mirrored, every document copied before she could erase it. Claire leaned back in her chair, a grim smile tugging at her lips. "She's digging her own grave." Noah's expression didn't change. "Good. Let her believe she's still safe." The next morning, headlines began to stir, quiet whispers on business blogs. Wilder Tech faces internal audit following $300 million deal. Nothing serious yet, but enough to make investors nervous. Marissa stormed into her PR director's office. "We control the story," she snapped. "Release a statement, standard review, no irregularities, continued confidence in leadership." Her director hesitated. "Should we mention the parent trust's involvement?" "No," she said quickly. "Leave that out." Meanwhile, Ethan was unraveling faster than she realized. His assistant quit after the auditors contacted her for an interview. His shell companies, once airtight, started receiving subpoenas. "They're coming after me," he told Marissa over the phone, his voice breaking. "If this continues, they'll freeze my accounts." "Then fix it," she shouted. "You promised this couldn't be traced." "I did everything I could," he snapped. "You're the one who signed the damn contracts." She hung up before her anger cracked into fear. That same day, Hayes delivered his report to Noah. Pages of traced payments, falsified invoices, and timestamp messages between Marissa and Ethan. "This is airtight," Hayes said. "If this reaches the board, she's finished. If it reaches the press, she's radioactive." Noah flipped through the evidence slowly, page by page. "Not yet. Let it leak piece by piece. I want her to feel it crumble, not collapse." That night, Marissa walked into their house to find Noah cooking. The smell of garlic and rosemary filled the air like nostalgia. "You're in a good mood," she said cautiously. He smiled. "Just thought we should celebrate. You've been everywhere lately. The company's thriving, the deal's solid. You've earned it." She relaxed slightly, setting down her purse. "You're sweet. I've missed this." He poured her a glass of wine. "To us," he said. She lifted her glass. "To the future." He watched her drink, quiet, calm. The next morning she arrived at work to chaos. Her assistant met her at the door, pale and trembling. "Ma'am, the news broke. Someone leaked internal documents, payments, emails, vendor lists. They're saying it's a conflict of interest." Marissa froze. "What?" "It's everywhere. Investors are panicking. The board's calling an emergency meeting." She ran into her office, slammed the door, and opened her laptop. Headlines filled the screen. "CEO accused of misusing funds linked to business partner." Underneath was a photo of her and Ethan at the LA dinner, smiling like newlyweds. Her hands shook as she dialed Ethan. No answer. She called again. Still nothing. Then her email pinged, a message from the parent trust. The subject line read, Notice of Governance Review. The sender, Arden Trust. Her heart dropped. She clicked it open. Inside was one line, We'll be in touch. She stared at it for a long time before her vision blurred. She didn't know who they were, didn't know what they wanted, but someone was moving against her, and it was coming from the top. Across town, Noah watched the same headlines scroll across his screen. Claire stood behind him, arms folded. You just turned the tide. He nodded slowly. Not yet. This is just smoke. The fire comes next. He looked out the window, where the first snow of the season began to fall, covering the city in a quiet white. Marissa thought the storm was outside. She didn't know it had already started inside her own walls. The boardroom smelled of tension and fresh paper. Marissa stood at the head of the long mahogany table, surrounded by faces that once clapped for her. Cameras weren't allowed, but the weight of public perception pressed through every word. The chairman, a gray-haired man named Dawson, adjusted his glasses. Mrs. Wilder, he began, the trust has requested full disclosure on vendor transactions. We need clarity on these consulting payments. Marissa kept her voice even. They were strategic partnerships, approved under my authority. There's been a misunderstanding. Dawson slid a document across the table. One of these vendors belongs to Ethan Cole. Her throat went dry. That's not possible. Ethan's company was independent. Then you'll have no problem opening your records, he replied quietly. She hesitated, then forced a smile. Of course not. Across the city, Noah and Claire listened through a live feed Hayes had set up via the audit team. Every word felt like music played on broken strings. She's cornered, Claire whispered. Noah didn't answer. His eyes stayed fixed on the waveform of her voice on the screen, rising and falling in measured panic. She'll try to lie her way out first, he murmured. Then she'll beg. When the meeting ended, Marissa walked out into the hallway, pulse racing. She called Ethan immediately. They know about your company, she hissed. Someone's feeding them information from the trust. Ethan's tone was sharp, defensive. What did you tell them? Nothing. But the auditors are asking questions only you could answer. They mentioned account numbers, things they shouldn't even have. He swore under his breath. Maybe one of your people leaked, or your husband. He always looked too calm. She froze. Noah. Think about it, Ethan snapped. The trust. He set that up, didn't he? Years ago when you two started the company. What if he never let go? Marissa ended the call without replying. Her mind replayed the last few weeks, his strange calm, his polite smiles, the way he hadn't fought when she'd mentioned divorce. Her stomach turned. That evening, she came home early. The house felt too quiet. Noah was in the study working on his laptop. We need to talk, she said. He looked up, polite as ever. Sure, about what? About the audit, she said carefully. Do you know anything about this Arden Trust? He frowned lightly. I remember setting it up. Why? Her heart skipped. The auditors said it's the parent trust overseeing the company. Really? He tilted his head. That's strange. I thought you handled operations. She stared at him, searching for something in his face, but he was unreadable. You're enjoying this, she whispered. He smiled faintly. Should I be? She turned and walked out, every step heavier than the last. Upstairs, she called Ethan again, whispering into the phone. I think he's behind it. I think Noah's pulling the strings. Ethan's voice cracked. Then we're finished. He's got everything. Emails, transfers, the audit trail. If he connects it to me, I'm done. Marissa pressed her hand to her forehead. You promised me this was safe. I lied, he said flatly. We both did. She slammed the phone down, breath shaking. That same night, Noah met Hayes in a quiet cafe downtown. The forensic accountant handed him a flash drive. Full audit report, he said, includes screenshots of their messages and proof of vendor fraud. It's over. Noah looked at the drive, then slid it back. Not yet. File it with the trust board first. Let the internal channels make it official. I want her to see the letter before the public does. Cruel, Hayes said with a half smile. Consequential, Noah corrected. The next morning, Marissa walked into her office to find an envelope on her desk. It bore the Arden Trust seal. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The letter inside was brief, formal, clinical, devastating. Pending review of fiduciary misconduct, you are temporarily suspended from your position as CEO of WelderTech. Her vision blurred. She reread it twice, then 3 times before the meaning sank in. Across town, Noah stood in the same kitchen where she once told him, "Everything's about to change." He poured himself a cup of coffee and glanced at his phone as news alerts began to buzz. WelderTech CEO suspended pending investigation. Stock drops 8% amid scandal. Sources claim misconduct in $300 million deal. Claire called a few minutes later. "She's finished, Noah. The board will move to remove her permanently within the week." Noah said nothing for a while, just watched the steam rise from his cup. Let them. I want her to feel every second of it. He hung up and looked out the window where snow still covered the driveway. The quiet felt almost merciful. Marissa sat in her office, surrounded by silence and reporters outside the gate. Her reflection in the dark glass didn't look like a CEO anymore. It looked like a woman watching her own empire collapse one headline at a time, and somewhere deep inside her panic, one question kept echoing. If Noah was behind all this, what else had he planned that she hadn't seen yet? Ethan's panic came first. He called Marissa 3 times that morning, voice shaking, every word soaked in fear. "They froze my accounts," he said. "The auditors subpoenaed my company records. They're saying I falsified invoices. If this goes to trial, I'm done." Marissa sat at her kitchen table, staring blankly at the marble pattern. "You said they couldn't trace it." "They traced everything," he shouted. "Every transfer, every damn receipt. Do you understand? I'm being investigated for fraud." She rubbed her temples. "Calm down. We'll fix this." Ethan's laugh was bitter. "You think they'll believe you now? You're suspended. You can't even access your office." She ended the call and threw her phone across the room. It hit the floor with a crack, battery skidding under the counter. The house that once smelled like victory now smelled like dust and regret. Later that day, 2 men in suits knocked on the door. They handed her a sealed envelope. Subpoena for financial disclosure. Her stomach dropped. When Noah came home, she was sitting on the couch, pale and still. He set his keys down. "Rough day." She glared at him. "Don't act innocent. I know what you're doing." He tilted his head slightly. "Doing? You're behind this audit. You're using that trust to destroy me." Noah smiled faintly, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "Destroy? I'm not the one who stole from the company, Marissa." "I built that company," she shouted. "I made it what it is." "And I made sure it survived," he said softly. "You just turned it into a circus." Her breath hitched, a mix of fury and fear. "You think you've won? You'll lose everything too." He stepped closer, voice calm, deliberate. "Marissa, I already lost everything the day you stopped being honest." He picked up his briefcase. "This isn't about revenge. It's about balance." She wanted to scream, but the words wouldn't come. That night, she called Ethan again. He didn't answer. She called his assistant instead, only to hear, "Mr. Cole's unavailable. Federal investigators requested his cooperation this evening." Her knees went weak. She dropped the phone, gripping the counter for balance. The next morning, headlines spread faster than wildfire. "Business partner under federal investigation." Her photo appeared beside his. While the media dissected her scandal, Claire filed Noah's counter motion for asset protection and custody review. Buried inside the filings was a quiet bomb, request for paternity verification. It was standard legal language, easy to overlook, but the test results would not be. A week later, Claire handed Noah the envelope. "Results came back," she said. "You ready?" He nodded once, though his eyes told a different story. He tore it open slowly, scanned the lines. 2 names, Ethan Cole. 2 matches, 0 relation to Noah Wilder. He didn't speak for a long time, just stared at the page like it was a foreign language. Claire reached out carefully. "You okay?" Noah folded the paper neatly and slid it back into the envelope. "Yes." Then he stood. "File for full custody. They'll need stability. She can't give them that anymore." In court the following week, Marissa looked drained, her makeup heavy, her eyes hollow. The judge's gavel echoed through the silence as evidence rolled across screens. financial transfers, signed approvals, emails between her and Ethan. Judge Holt's voice was steady. Mrs. Wilder, do you deny authorizing these transactions? Marissa's throat was too dry to answer. Mrs. Wilder? She shook her head weakly. No. The judge nodded and turned to the next file. DNA results also indicate the minors in question are not biologically related to Mr. Wilder. However, his continued financial and emotional support establishes him as a stable guardian. Custody will remain with Mr. Wilder until further notice. Marissa gasped audibly. The courtroom murmured. Ethan sat 2 rows behind her, head lowered, hand covering his mouth. Noah didn't move, didn't smirk, didn't even look at her. He just watched the judge sign the order, his expression unreadable. As the hearing ended, reporters crowded the hallway. Microphones flashed like lightning. Mr. Wilder, did you know about the affair? One shouted. Are you seeking damages? He walked past them quietly, pausing only once to glance back through the glass door. Marissa stood frozen inside the courtroom, her world collapsing around her. Claire caught up with him outside. It's done, she said. He nodded. No, not yet. The company's next. She still thinks she can recover. I'm going to make sure she understands what losing really means. He got into his car, engine purring softly under the falling snow. In the rearview mirror, the courthouse shrank behind him. Inside, Marissa sank onto a bench, tears smearing her mascara, as a reporter whispered nearby. She lost everything. Even the children weren't his. But what hurt more wasn't the judgment. It was realizing Noah had known, and still never raised his voice. He hadn't screamed. He hadn't cursed. He'd simply smiled and dismantled her, one silent move at a time. And that silence was louder than any revenge she could have imagined. The boardroom was packed, cameras flashing from outside the glass walls as the Wilder tech directors gathered for what the press called the meeting that would decide the company's future. Marissa sat at the end of the table, flanked by 2 lawyers, her once perfect posture now weighed down by exhaustion. She'd lost the court case, lost the children, lost her reputation, but she still clung to one illusion, that she could salvage her position. The chairman cleared his throat. This meeting is to discuss the findings of the Arden Trust review. His tone was formal, almost merciful. We've reviewed all documentation related to vendor transactions, misappropriated funds, and ethical breaches. The conclusion is clear. Marissa tried to interrupt. Those payments were legitimate business expenses. He raised a hand. Mrs. Wilder, the review is conclusive. The vendor you approved, Cole Consulting, was owned by Ethan Cole, with whom you had a personal relationship. The board cannot overlook the conflict of interest. Your actions place this company and our investors at risk. Murmurs rippled through the room. Cameras outside the frosted glass flickered like lightning. Marissa's throat tightened. I was manipulated. Ethan handled the financial side. I trusted him. The chairman leaned forward. And who approved the contracts, Mrs. Wilder? Silence. Who signed the $300 million deal without disclosing the relationship? Her voice broke. I did. The words landed like a gunshot. Across the table, one of the legal officers slid a document toward her. Effective immediately, the board has voted to remove you as CEO of WilderTech, pending further legal proceedings. Marissa's eyes darted around the room. Faces that once smiled at her now looked away. You can't do this, she whispered. I built this company. The chairman's gaze didn't soften. No, Mrs. Wilder. You fronted it. Someone else built it. For a moment, the world seemed to blur. She looked down at the document, and that's when she saw it. The signature at the bottom authorizing her removal. Noah Wilder, beneficial owner, Arden Trust, LLC. Her breath caught. No. Every piece clicked into place. The audits, the trust, the quiet way he never fought back. It was all him. Across town, Noah sat in his office, watching the live feed on his tablet. Claire stood beside him, arms crossed. It's official, she said. The board voted unanimously. She's out. They'll announce it to the press within the hour. Noah didn't smile. He just closed the tablet slowly. And Ethan? Federal fraud charges. The investigators tied 3 of his companies directly to embezzled funds. He'll probably serve time. He leaned back in his chair. Then we're nearly done. Claire hesitated. You know she's going to lose everything now, right? Her assets, her home, her public name. She's finished. She took everything first, he said quietly. I'm just returning the balance sheet to zero. Meanwhile, Marissa was escorted out of the building she once ruled. Her ID badge deactivated before she reached the elevator. Cameras swarmed the front doors, journalists shouting her name. She kept her head down, one trembling hand shielding her face as questions flew. Did you steal from your company? Were you having an affair with your business partner? What's next for you, Marissa? She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her voice felt trapped somewhere between guilt and disbelief. Hours later, she sat in her car, parked outside what used to be her home, staring through the windshield at the lights still glowing inside. Noah was there. She could see his silhouette through the window, calm, unbothered, tucking the children into bed. The same children she'd lied about, the same man she'd betrayed. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared. You once said I'd never understand power. You were right. I understood it too well. She looked at the message until her hands began to shake. She wanted to reply, to explain, to plead, but there was nothing left to say that would matter. Inside, Noah turned off the hallway light and sat on the couch in the quiet glow of the fireplace. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't angry, just still. Claire texted him minutes later. Press just broke the story. She's trending everywhere. He set the phone aside and whispered to himself, Good. Outside, Marissa's car was still idling in the dark street, engine humming like a heartbeat that refused to die. She whispered to no one. He took everything. And somewhere deep in her chest, she knew that wasn't true. He hadn't taken it. She'd handed it to him piece by piece, thinking he'd never be strong enough to use it. She was wrong, because when a kind man learns what betrayal costs, kindness becomes the sharpest weapon of all. Winter pressed hard against the city. The streets dusted with frost as cameras gathered outside the federal courthouse. Reporters huddled in coats, microphones raised toward the steps where Ethan Cole appeared in handcuffs, flanked by 2 U.S. Marshals. He didn't look like the confident executive from the press photos anymore. His face was pale, jaw clenched, eyes darting toward the crowd as flashes erupted. Inside, the courtroom was full. The prosecutor read the charges in a crisp monotone. Fraud, money laundering, falsified financial statements. The evidence from the audit was airtight. Noah had made sure of that. Every transaction traced back to Ethan's shell companies. Every forged document recovered and time-stamped. Ethan's lawyer tried to plead for leniency, calling it a tragic lapse of judgment, but the judge didn't flinch. You used corporate funds for personal gain, she said firmly. You manipulated financial records to conceal your relationship with the company's CEO. This is not a lapse, it's deliberate misconduct. When the gavel came down, sentencing him to 8 years, Ethan didn't look at the judge. He turned once toward the gallery, where Marissa sat in the back row, sunglasses hiding her eyes. Their gaze met for a brief, bitter second before he was led away. She didn't follow him. Outside the courthouse, Noah waited in a parked car across the street. He watched through the windshield as the cameras swarmed. Claire sat beside him, scanning her tablet. It's over, she said quietly. The company's stock just stabilized. The board issued a statement clearing you of all involvement. Arden Trust now officially lists you as the founder and majority owner. Your name's public again. Noah nodded, eyes still fixed on the courthouse doors. She knows yet? She will in an hour, Claire said. The press release goes live at noon. It names you as the architect of the company's original patent filings and confirms you were the silent owner all along. He let out a long breath, watching his reflection in the glass. Good. Across town, Marissa sat alone in her apartment. The blinds were half closed, sunlight slicing through dust in quiet lines. Her phone buzzed nonstop, calls from journalists, former colleagues, creditors, but she didn't answer any of them. On the TV, a news anchor's voice cut through the silence. In a surprising development, WilderTech's true founder and majority owner, Noah Wilder, has been revealed following a full corporate disclosure by Arden Trust. Marissa's breath caught. She turned toward the screen, disbelief spreading across her face as they showed old footage. Noah standing beside her in the early days, helping present their prototype at a small tech expo. He'd been there from the start, invisible to the public but essential to the company's birth. The anchor continued. Sources close to the investigation confirmed that Wilder had transferred ownership into a private trust years ago, allowing his wife to operate as CEO while he retained silent control. Following recent revelations of misconduct, he has reassumed full operational leadership. The phone slipped from her hand and hit the floor. For a moment, all she could hear was the echo of her own heartbeat. She remembered every time she'd called him small, unambitious, naive. Every time she told him she was the visionary and he was just the man behind the code. Noah's face appeared on the screen again, calm, dignified, answering questions outside the board meeting. Wilder Tech was built on trust, he said to reporters. It's unfortunate when people forget what that word means. My goal now is simple, to rebuild integrity. The reporters shouted his name, but he didn't linger. He turned away, stepped into a waiting car, and was gone before they could ask more. Marissa sank to the floor, covering her face. The empire she thought she owned now had his name on every document, every patent, every account. Even the apartment lease she lived in was paid for by a company under his control. Everything she'd touched belonged to him all along. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a message appeared from an unknown number. You used to say I was lucky to have you. Turns out, luck had nothing to do with it. She threw the phone across the room, her chest heaving. But the truth didn't go away. The headlines kept coming, one after another. Noah Wilder reclaims company after wife scandal. True owner revealed in $300 million deal. CEO's ex pushed out following court rulings. Outside, cameras were already gathering beneath her window, shouting questions to the empty air. She pulled the curtains shut and sat in the dark. At that exact moment, Noah walked through the doors of Wilder Tech's headquarters for the first time in years. The staff turned as he passed, some recognizing him, others realizing for the first time that the man who had been quietly in the background was now the one in charge. He paused in the lobby beneath the company logo and looked up. The silver letters gleamed under the lights. Wilder Tech, his name, his work, his revenge. He didn't feel joy. He didn't feel triumph, only closure. Claire met him at the elevator. Press wants a statement. He shook his head. Not yet. Let them write whatever they want. The story's already told. As the elevator doors closed, the reflection of his face merged with the company's name behind him. Two halves finally aligned. Outside, the city moved on, but inside one quiet apartment, Marissa sat surrounded by silence, realizing that the man she left had never been poor, only patient, and that patience had just taken everything she'd ever built. The sun was just rising over the skyline when Marissa walked along the river, hood pulled low, trying to avoid the stares of strangers who now whispered her name like a cautionary tale. Her face was on every screen in the coffee shop she passed. Former CEO Marissa Wilder faces civil suits following corporate scandal. The woman who once commanded rooms with confidence now couldn't meet her own reflection in the glass. She hadn't spoken to Ethan since the sentencing. His lawyer had called once, saying Ethan wanted to make peace, but she hung up before hearing the rest. She couldn't forgive him, but she couldn't blame him either. They'd both built their empire on deceit. It just collapsed faster than she thought it would. When she reached her apartment building, two reporters were waiting near the entrance. "Mrs. Wilder," one shouted, "do you have any comment about your ex-husband taking full control of the company?" She froze, then forced a brittle smile. "He earned it," she said quietly, before disappearing inside. The lobby guard nodded to her with pity instead of respect. That stung more than anything. Upstairs, unopened mail covered her counter. Foreclosure warnings, legal summons, charity event refunds. The world that once adored her now demanded every dollar back. She turned on the TV for noise, but there was no escaping it. Noah's face appeared again, composed, soft-spoken, standing before reporters. "Success means nothing without integrity," he said. "Rebuilding trust takes more strength than building wealth. Wilder Tech is committed to both." Applause followed. The camera zoomed in on his eyes, steady, kind, unreadable. The same eyes she used to think were too gentle for business. The same eyes that saw everything she never thought he noticed. She muted the sound and stared at him in silence. A tear slipped down her cheek, not from anger, but from something colder. Recognition. He hadn't just won. He'd outgrown her in every possible way. Later that afternoon, a courier delivered an envelope to her door. She hesitated before opening it, half expecting another lawsuit. But inside was a check, not for millions, but for just enough to live on, signed by Noah Wilder. Below his signature was a single line handwritten in ink. For the years you gave before you forgot who you were. Her hands trembled. She didn't know if it was mercy or one last reminder that even her survival now depended on his kindness. Either way, it hurt worse than hate ever could. Across town, Noah stood in the top-floor office that once belonged to her. The city stretched wide below him, reflections of silver and glass. Claire entered quietly. "The board finalized your reinstatement," she said. "You're officially CEO again." He nodded, barely reacting. "It's just a title." She watched him for a moment. "You could have destroyed her completely. Why stop here?" Noah looked out at the skyline, his voice calm. "Because destruction isn't the goal. Understanding is. She needed to see who I really was. That's enough." Claire smiled faintly. "You're still the kind one, huh?" He shook his head. "No. Just someone who learned where kindness ends." The room fell silent. The company hum outside the glass walls sounded like distant waves, steady, endless. He opened the window slightly, letting in the wind. For the first time in years, it didn't feel heavy. That evening, he drove home to a smaller house on the edge of town. The children were in the backyard, chasing bubbles, laughter rising into the dusk. He joined them quietly, rolling up his sleeves, the sound of their joy cutting through everything that had come before. When they ran to him, arms wide, he lifted them both effortlessly. "Dad," one said, "are you happy now?" He smiled, eyes soft but distant. "Happier than I've ever been." As the sun sank behind the trees, he looked toward the horizon, thinking of everything he'd lost and gained. Revenge hadn't made him richer. It had just set the balance right. Back in the city, Marissa sat by her window clutching the check, staring out at the same fading light. Her empire was gone, her name tarnished, her partner in prison. But worse than all that was the truth she couldn't escape. He'd never been poor. He'd just been waiting. And when he finally moved, he didn't destroy her with rage. He destroyed her with grace. Because in the end, Noah Wilder didn't raise his voice, didn't strike back, didn't gloat. He simply let the truth do what vengeance never could. End her story where it began.